He's staring at the screen again. One more spin. Just one more. His legs bouncing, palms sweaty, and in his head, he's already spent the money he hasn't even won yet. But the moment that will stops, nothing. Dead silence, except the machine's gentle mockery. He sighs, reaches into his pocket, and presses the button again. Now pause. Why is this scene so familiar? Not just to him, but to millions across the world. Why does something so obviously risky, so clearly designed to take your money, feel so irresistibly rewarding? Here's the thing. Gambling doesn't hook you with money. It hooks you with hope. It's not the win, it's the almost win. That cruel, near miss that tricks your brain into thinking, I was so close. Next time, I've got it. That illusion of control, even when everything is pure chance, is like a psychological trick mirror. You think you're getting better. You think you're learning. You're not. There's a reason casinos, virtual or real, are built like psychological booby traps. The sounds, the colors, the animations, even the way the rewards are timed out, every little bit is precision engineered to poke at your dopamine system. That's the brain's reward circuit, the same one activated by food, sex, social approval, and cocaine. Yeah, same neighborhood. So when you gamble, and especially when you get a reward or a near miss, your brain releases a hit of dopamine. But here's the twist, it releases even more dopamine when the reward is unpredictable. Your brain loves not knowing. It loves the chase, the suspense, the maybe this time. And that's what keeps you hooked, not the jackpot, but the possibility of one. It becomes less about winning and more about trying. The longer you chase it, the more you blur the line between entertainment and compulsion. But is this just biology going rogue? Or is something deeper happening here, something emotional, even existential? Because what if the addiction isn't to the game, but to the feeling it gives you before the outcome even hits? Let's dig deeper. So what exactly is that feeling just before the outcome hits? It's not just excitement, it's something far more layered. Imagine compressing anticipation, hope, a sense of rebellion, and maybe even a splash of desperation into a single second. That moment when your fingers hovering, when the dice are midair, when the last card's about to flip, that's not just a thrill. It's a psychological cocktail that temporarily silences everything else. Stress, boredom, loneliness, gone. For just a few seconds, you're suspended in a kind of emotional freefall. Win or lose, it's the escape that's addictive. Now let's be real, this doesn't just happen to people with addictive personalities or people who are down bad. Even totally regular folks who don't seem vulnerable can get caught in the loop. Why? Because gambling taps into universal emotional needs, the desire for control in a chaotic world, the fantasy of instant success, and the pure joy of unpredictability. And our brains reward that unpredictability with dopamine, yes, even when we lose. That's what makes gambling such a paradox. You could be losing consistently and still feel like you're getting something out of it. Physically, this habit builds like any other addiction. The more often you chase the reward, the more your brain adjusts. It dulls your natural dopamine receptors, so you need more stimulation to feel the same high. That's why someone who used to be satisfied with a small bet slowly ends up making riskier, more frequent ones. It's not greed. It's neurological adaptation. Socially, it gets even trickier. Unlike something like alcohol or drugs, gambling is invisible. You could be sitting quietly in your room, losing hundreds, and no one would know. There's no smell, no slurred speech, no obvious crash. That makes it easier to hide and harder to spot. Even worse? Society tends to glamorize the risk-taker, the underdog who wins big. So when someone chases that high, it's not just about money. It's about being seen as bold, lucky, smart. But what happens when that fantasy cracks? When the emotional fuel starts to burn out and the losses pile up? The turning point isn't always dramatic, but it is sharp. And it reveals something uncomfortable about the addiction itself. Here's where it gets raw. Because the moment that fantasy breaks, the moment you realize you're not just chasing money, you're chasing a feeling you can't pin down, it hits hard. There's a specific type of crash that happens when the dopamine doesn't land the way it used to. When the near miss doesn't feel exciting anymore. When you keep betting, not because you think you'll win, but because you don't know what else to do with your emotions. And that's the core reveal. Gambling doesn't just become addictive because of the rush, it becomes addictive because it fills a gap. A psychological silence. Whether it's boredom, loneliness, sadness, or a craving for validation, gambling gives you something to do with it. For many, especially those who feel powerless in other parts of their lives, gambling becomes a strange form of control. You press a button, you take a risk, you're doing something. Even if the odds are against you, the choice is yours. And that illusion of control is a powerful anesthetic. But it doesn't stay harmless. When someone's caught in that loop, the emotional cost starts stacking up even faster than the financial one. Anxiety, guilt, shame, they all creep in. And ironically, to cope with those emotions, they gamble more. That's the trap. The very thing you use to escape your problems becomes the biggest one. Even physically, your body gets caught up. That heart-pounding feeling when you're down to your last few credits? That's your fight or flight system activating. Cortisol levels spike. Adrenaline floods. Your brain goes into crisis mode, and for a moment, you feel alive. But you're not solving anything. You're just stuck in a high-stakes cycle of stress and relief. Still, the biggest twist? It's not the game keeping you hooked. It's the emotional story you've written around it. I'm due for a win. I've learned the pattern. I can win it all back. These beliefs are deeply emotional, not logical. They turn gambling into a narrative. And when you're the main character in your own redemption arc, walking away doesn't feel like safety, it feels like quitting the story before the ending. So how do you break out of a loop that's built on hope, emotion, and biology all at once? That's where things get surprising, because it's less about willpower and more about rewiring what the brain really craves. So how do you rewire the craving? How do you escape something that feels emotional, thrilling, and let's be honest, comforting at times? The answer lies in understanding what the addiction was truly feeding. Because gambling isn't just about winning money. It's about escaping discomfort, about feeling in control, and about experiencing excitement in a life that might otherwise feel flat or uncertain. Once you identify the real need underneath the habit, whether that's stimulation, validation, or a sense of purpose, you can start finding healthier ways to meet it. The most effective way to break free? It's not shame. It's not punishment. It's replacement. The brain isn't wired to handle stopping very well, it needs to shift focus. When people start filling those dopamine gaps with new kinds of unpredictable but healthy rewards, learning something challenging, physical activity, social wins, even creative risks, the brain starts rebuilding that reward system. Slowly, the addiction weakens, not because the urge disappears, but because something better takes its place. Something that doesn't drain you afterward. And remember that illusion of control? It doesn't have to go away. It can be redirected. When someone builds something from scratch, a project, a skill, a new relationship, they regain that sense of power. The difference is, now the stakes are real and the outcomes are in your hands. Even the emotional arc, that personal redemption story we talked about, you don't have to throw that away. But maybe the win isn't about a jackpot. Maybe the real win is learning how to sit with discomfort without running from it. Maybe it's learning how to chase a high that actually builds you up instead of breaking you down in disguise. So yes, gambling feels addictive because it was designed to be. It triggers our biology, plays with our psychology, and wraps it all in an emotional story we want to believe in. But underneath that, what we're really craving isn't the game. It's the feeling of hope, of risk, of meaning. And those aren't things you can only find in a casino. In fact, what if the real gamble isn't risking your money, but risking the chance to build something real without the safety net of luck? That might just be the biggest win of all.